Yeah, Aaron, do you want to go ahead and, are you good?
Yeah, I can't, it's not letting me live stream for some reason. I tried this earlier and it was fine, but at the moment I have recording, but I can't live stream to YouTube,
Okay.
which I can upload it there after the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Are we still good?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Can we do a roll call, Aaron?
Yes. Councilmember Reardon,
Here.
Councilmember Sir,
Here.
Councilmember Gunselman,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Here.
Councilmember Feist.
Here. Can you join me for the pledge?
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll open the public forum. The public is permitted to address the city council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. Would anyone care to comment on an item not on the agenda? Hearing nobody, we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. So we have our pool party this Friday on July 4th. We've had a ton of emergencies lately that Dan's been dealing with. On Friday, we had two. You guys heard about the first one, I think, which was a leak into the creek from the wastewater system. It was over about a week ago. That one, the sewer main got blocked with rocks. It kind of exposed leaks in the water main there. And once we unblocked it, things started flowing again. But basically, it's we need a longer term repair. So it's on kind of the priority list for the next batch of repairs. And then on Friday, there's a hole in Gopher Flat Road. We think it's a storm drain, but we got to get in there with a camera and really figure out what's going on. So there's a steel plate over the road there temporarily. And then also on Friday, CAL FIRE down in their training facility drilled into the wastewater line coming out of Preston. So we had to shut down the Ione tertiary plant over the weekend, did a repair that looks like it's holding, and then we're going to make it more permanent. But the plant's up and operating again today. And CAL FIRE has accepted responsibility. It's going to pay for that repair. Any questions on that?
Right.
Um,
Cole Street, Gopher
Yep.
Flat, where it crosses, where Gopher Gulch Creek crosses Gopher Flat.
I was wondering.
Well, no, excuse me, that's, no, not where it crosses. It's where the water, it's the creek that comes down by my house, which that whole basin above my house, or that all comes down and it comes down the street and then it crosses over to Gopher Gulch Creek. Right there.
Yep.
Was that about a 36-inch culvert? 20, yeah, it's a fairly big culvert.
Really released, I drove over Friday, you could really smell the sulfur,
That's from the mine, though.
yeah. But it comes up through the.
Right.
Sulfur.
Oh. In regards to that sewer main in the leak in the creek, is that main at any time underwater during high water? So it could be a real source of I&I. Okay. And where is it located? Oh, okay. Right.
You don't mean a source of I&I at the moment. You mean one of our old
That-
sources of I&I that we could
During high water.
clear up and, oh, well, maybe it was before and we'll have show a dent in our I&I after it's fixed.
Well, we have. Oh, okay. So it's functioning now like it's been functioning once those rocks were blockage was removed. Okay.
We'll need a different size line, because to avoid any leaky block.
Thanks.
Sorry, I realized I shouldn't be just talking from the audience. So it's a 6-inch line that has a 5-inch line inside it. And so we don't know if we're assuming the 5-inch line is broken also, but we could see little spots where the sewer is coming out into the creek. So we know it's underwater, and it's if it's leaking out, then it's leaking in, you know. Yeah, so it's going to be on our next list, if not sooner. But yeah.
So
5-inch adequate?
5 inches small, but it can work. Typically we would do 6, but it depends. We can try to do a cure in place kind of pipe. You know, kind of put it on the inside and expand it, and it'll fill it up. But we don't know. We're worried about the thickness making it too small. So we'll have to talk to Grant and see what happens with that. But it's not very deep in the creek, so it might be cheaper just to dig it up. But then we have the stream, you know, a permit that we'd have to go through and all that stuff. So yeah, we'll have to get into it. But it'll be a big deal.
do we,
Is it,
yeah,
is it possible to get it done before the rain started again this fall? this winter?
We could if we we could. I mean, it's already underwater, so it's not really
Yeah.
anything more.
No.
But yeah, it'd just be extra pressure of the layers on top of it. So it would be more coming into the plant. Yeah.
And I- get it done.
I'm not sure at this point.
It's not.
you said it's,
one of the-
you said it's functioning.
Right.
Right.
The
It's
line is
functioning.
functioning.
Right.
Yeah. It's just letting extra water in, you know, so it's being diluted right now.
We're starting all those other I&I projects. This wasn't one of them, so it's not currently planned to be done this year. I mean, we have to see what happens with it, but
You're monitoring it. though.
I mean,
Correct.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
some other updates. So CDCR approved the Henderson repair on Friday, so we're moving that contract forward, and that's all looking good. We also, Dan and I met with a couple of firms that are interested in bidding on the wastewater plant, along with Hydroscience. Mason's been working incredible hours, but we got the new sewer billing transition happening with this billing cycle. He's also been working on the new kind of payroll system as well. So once we're sure that's up and running well, we can stop paying our current payroll service and we'll have everything switched over. But just to give you an idea, these are like 4 to 7 hour meetings like every day that with them as they configure and test everything.
Fun.
Yeah. He was very smart when he took some time off. I had to fill in, so I got a good appreciation for it. And then the I&I repairs are starting possibly this week, today. We have had a couple of people express interest in the design review committee, but again, we still have an opening there. And then, like I said, we have our July 4th parade and pool party. And then, so we're actually, hope you guys can all make the party. We have Rhythm on, who's going to be playing music there. It's a steel drum DJ. We have a food truck, an ice cream truck. And with Accra, we have this children's parade planned in the morning. So I think it should be a lot of fun. Other than that, I think, the list is the same as last time. And then just to confirm, we've canceled the first meeting in July and August. So our next meeting is July 21st and then August 18th. And here are some of the items. Looking to get just an update on striping, just so you guys know what's planned. Also, you've asked for a code enforcement update. We're working on that. The county assessor will be here in the July meeting to update us on property tax revenue. And then Aaron is working on some zoning code and planning process improvements. Dan's looking at a trench once ordinance, which would be once we dig up the street, people need to do their repairs then. Once it's paved, they have to wait a certain amount of time before they can dig it up again. So that's so that we don't pave a road and then PG&E comes along and digs it up again right away. We're also looking at how we can maximize some of the rental of city facilities and probably might be September, but a short-term rental update, kind of what's going on there. And that's my update.
Thank you, Tom. Any more questions for him? Nope. Okay, item 6 is the approval of minutes from June 16th. Anyone care to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, we don't do that anymore.
You
Right?
can, that's
Okay.
fine. It's unanimous, Aaron.
Administrative agenda. Here we go.
Yeah, so hopefully my staff report really highlighted the changes that were made since the last meeting. Just to summarize quickly, so on the revenue side, we went through, verified the latest data across the board. When we did the long range forecast in April, we expressed concern about sales tax revenue. Since then, we've actually seen it come in pretty solid. So the numbers that we had in there were accurate. Also got an update from Republic, it was kind of a slight increase on franchise revenue. And then I just want you guys all to understand that the numbers we're forecasting for Measure P, that's all they are, is a forecast. So the plan is whatever comes in is what we'll reserve. Well, a year from now, it may not total exactly the numbers you guys see. Just want to make sure that's understood. And then, there's kind of relatively big drop in grants from last year to this year, where we had money for those road projects that we did. And then on the expense side, we reviewed the allocations, again, how we're allocating time between the general fund, enterprise funds. And, the updated budget gave you a breakdown, both in terms of revenue and expense. It's about 40% on general funds, 60% on other funds. Went back and, after our discussion last time, looked at potentially at delaying some general fund projects, really eliminated general fund subsidizing any street projects in this upcoming year. And we signed a couple of smaller capital projects to the appropriate impact fee fund. So like we have a historic impact fee and we have a city facility impact fee fund. And we use those for some of the building repairs. So move that out of the general fund. And then we also got some better estimates, more updated estimates on various expenses. And then just to be clear about like the general fund reserves and Measure P. So last year's budget, this budget, I've really been trying to make it a lot more transparent about kind of how money is being moved around. As far as I can tell, we've actually been using general fund reserves for a number of years, and I don't think it's a new practice. I mean, it is something that we need to stop doing to get to a sustainable budget. I think this budget is a pretty big swing. Again, mostly due to Measure P from about negative 250,000 to a positive 200,000. And then, so if you look at the budget, you'll see that positive reserve between expenses, revenue and expenses in the general fund. If you take out Measure P, which we're reserving all of it, then we are using about 193,000 from reserves. And so I could stop there. We could ask questions. I do have some additional changes that I want to go over, but I think maybe we should stop there, answer questions. Right, beyond that happened after the packet.
I'd like clarification on, focus on, under your summary in the last paragraph. Since you're going to focus more on in-house projects in this budget, an operational difference. And yet it's stated a couple of times, and you stated it specifically, that street projects were reduced to stay within street funds next year and not impact the general fund. And yet, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I sense that one of the priorities for our town is its streets and roads. That's why we did the head of Measure P.
Right.
So it's a little disconcerting for me to see that street projects are on hold. And yet says we're going to focus more on in-house projects. So I would like some type of reconciliation
Sure.
of those two. And then examples of what you specifically refer to with in-house projects.
Yeah. So good question. Distinction I'm trying to make here is things that we can do with our with our staff. So I mean, we'll certainly fix potholes and do kinds of projects that we can do internally versus a large street project where we put out a bid and an RFP and a company comes in like Ora Madre. Again, we don't have the measure fund fees yet. So what we discussed with the oversight committee was to reserve this year's funds. So the only way we could do a large street project would be to use general fund money. And so that's kind of the rub in this year's budget is we're not doing any large street projects.
So the garden fund is working on that.
And anything else our staff can do internally. So I think there's some small sidewalk work. There's staff rebuilt the fence over there. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do. It's just not going out for bid with WGA is the engineering firm and a big construction company coming in and doing a project. So Dan and I have been talking, we think there's quite a few projects we can do in-house. They'll be visible to the community. And that's what that paragraph means.
And if I could read between the lines, you're saying then we want to build up the Measure P reserve before we earmark it for any specific project.
Right. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, right?
Okay.
We did going to save it for the next meeting until we're sure about it, but we think we will be able to get some roads paved working with AWA.
Yeah.
Some smaller roads.
I think it's a good decision not to be moving general funds into streets and roads this year. And I appreciate the fact that we're going to build up those reserves. And I think that's our communication to the public so that they're not disappointed or wondering what's going on. Because it makes very good financial sense not to spend that money until we know how much it's going to be.
Right. But I really love the idea of seeing our public works crew doing small projects that they
Absolutely.
can do.
Yeah.
I like that idea
Yeah.
a lot.
Good. I had one other thought just on, we were talking about the reserves and that kind of thing. And some of this discussion that we've had over the last couple of meetings has raised that issue of we as a council trying to make some determination about goals for reserves, both a top end and a low end. And we're not going to do that tonight. But I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. I think that once we get this budget settled and get down the road a little bit, that'd be a good discussion to have so that we know what are the goals, where do we stand against those goals.
Yep. Totally agree. Let me pass. So I didn't want to confuse you guys with different numbers than what was in your packet. So I'd like to go over this, and this is just the first sheet that's updated with some of these adjustments that I have up on the screen right now. So we did get an updated cost from our city insurance. It's about $5,000 higher than we put in the budget. So we increased that by 5,000. We
Could I-
also have a,
Could I just add to that really quick?
Yep.
I was at that meeting on Friday. That's why that number's coming in late, but I will note that the total cost for the year this year went down by 1% from last year's. So it is actually, we're spending a little less money this year. We knew we were going to spend a little less, but not, and 1% is pretty minimal, but at least it's been going up by a lot the last couple years. So a nominal decrease, but flat is better than like a 10% increase that we've been seeing. So
yep, and then we have our closed session tonight. There's some placeholder money there in the budget. And then where we saved money, so I cut the city manager contingency fund. We had 20,000 for weed abatement enforcement. We cut that in half to 10,000. 10,000 is what Jackson used in their first year. We also lowered the city engineering budget. And again, we spent quite a bit this past year because of all the projects we had. So just looking at it more, I think with less projects, we can reduce those expenditures.
Are all of the city engineer funds showing up in the general fund? Because I noticed that that's significantly less, and I was wondering, is that true, or was there an
Yes.
allocation?
Yeah, no, all the WGA stuff is in general fund.
Perfect, thank you.
yep.
Yeah.
We have a separate professional services and wastewater, which is
Yeah.
hydroscience.
Yep.
Cutting the weed abatement probably makes sense because we're kind of starting this mid-season too. It won't really be a full, we don't really have the program up and running, so we'll probably have less.
It's going to be the normal time. Like we would, even if we had a lot of money, we wait for the fire department to do their inspections and so. Yeah, so I don't think that schedule will change, but.
We might, just on that same topic, we might be able to push a little harder. That $10,000 is there for, as a last resort, when you cannot get compliance from the property owner. You know, you do it at fairly expensive rates to get it cleared. Maybe we can just up the pressure to get property owners, to do that on their dime
Yeah.
before we dip into that $10,000.
Right. And again, this would be money we'd eventually get back, but it'd be
Right.
18 months later.
Yeah.
You could even almost facilitate it. I don't know if this would be appropriate, but you could say, hey, we have this contract services, because I would imagine there's at least a handful of people that just maybe got overwhelmed or don't have the reach out, and you could network people together too.
Yep.
And then they could pay instead of us paying. Just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic, the fire chief, knows a couple of high school kids, I think, who are looking for work. He can refer people, but once it comes to us for enforcement, we're using a professional firm. It's going to come in and do it.
Well, even that you could put in the letter, we're sending these people out. It would be in your best interest to pay them instead of having it go on your taxes.
Yeah, we'll make that clear. Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, we want to encourage people to do it. So then, to Dan, to your point about the reserve fund policy, that's kind of what I have here, kind of my next steps. Definitely, we want to continue to seek grants. A couple of grants, would really reduce the transfer from reserves. We're also looking to see if, again, it doesn't take a lot of money to make a difference. If we can actively rent city facilities, kind of monetize some of the assets we have. And again, this budget really focuses on wastewater projects. There's a lot of infrastructure there happening. As we talked about, this focus on in-house smaller projects. We're continuing to work with the Finance Ad Hoc Committee. And then, as we roll out this new financial platform, we really hope to see some staff efficiencies there where we can kind of do more with the people we have. And then I do think we should bring back this general fund reserve policy. And then the last thing that we were talking a little bit before the meeting started was also just doing some forensics so we all know kind of what happened to the highway bypass monies. I mean, it's not going to change anything, but I think it'd be good for all of us to kind of understand what happened. That was in 2010. So, so again, my hope is that you guys will, with these changes, pass the budget tonight. There's also 2 resolutions, which includes the city's, what's the name of it, Mason? The
Oh,
debt limit,
Appropriations.
our
limit.
appropriations limit.
appropriation limit.
Correct.
How important is it that I understand what the heck that is?
It's a state law about, I guess, how much debt we can incur as a city based on this formula they have.
Okay,
So
perfunctory.
trying to preserve or pursue grants and grant writing. Will we be holding on to, I know we are contracted with a grant writer,
Right.
but I think the comment from either the last meeting or meeting before last is there didn't seem to be the income to be able to justify
Right.
possibly.
So-
Are we planning to continue with the grant writer?
So they're not on a contingency or anything. We only pay them when they work on grants. So we can stop at any time. I'd like to continue to leverage them and see if we can get it to work before we just stop.
But we're not paying them a standby fee, just
We're
a
not.
retainer or anything to be there when we need it. That, I asked that same
Yeah.
question earlier before the meeting.
And we're trying to be really selective to make sure we know all the limits, the matching fees, our likelihood of success before we spend any money with them.
That, I know we talked about the new body cameras for the police department. There'll be, on a lease basis? Is that?
Yeah, so after the meeting, I asked Jim and the sergeant to look into it. They looked at buying versus lease. They still think the lease is the best option. And we're paying with that out of the police impact fees, so that's not in the general fund either.
Remember talking about that being paid for out of the grant and not out of the general fund. Is that still part of the plan?
Yeah.
To move ahead on this?
Not a grant from the development, the AB 1600 funds. And again, they're pretty hard on these cameras. If they break, we get one replaced immediately. And there's a bunch of other features that will make police more productive, where they don't have to deal with data. And
So in the police budget, and I'm not criticizing, I would just like to know there's $5,000 for safety equipment. What might that also include? Thank you for being here tonight, Edwin.
Certainly, my pleasure. That can be number, bulletproof vests, those can be $1,000. Every 5 years, we have to replace an option vest. So it can be a vest, it can be a broken firearm. We just bought two firearms recently. It can be a belt, equipment for a vehicle, safety equipment for vehicle, lighting equipment. So we really stretch that one as far as.
Okay.
But I feel it's necessary for public. We're generally pretty prudent.
No, I understand that. I was just curious to see if the cameras were also part of that, but that's outside. No. Okay, thank you.
I don't think this budget is the time, but for a couple years, it looked like we were kicking around the idea of paying off the USDA loan to prevent incurring more interest. And now that we're building, enterprise reserves, are we going to think about that?
I do have one of my first projects I did when I started here was an analysis on the payoff costs versus if we keep paying it off till the maturity date. So I still have that sheet. It's fixed. USDA set that up like almost 30 years ago. It's like a mortgage. So the payment schedule's the identical. We can bring it back. Nothing's changed.
Maybe,
can see-
before we do this next year, we can look at that
What's-
again.
what's the interest rate?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested off the top of my head. It slowly over time, it was heavy on interest at the beginning of the loan, very low principal. And then as time goes on, it shifts
Yeah.
to be
That's
heavily
all
principal, low interest. That way they get their money up front and then, you know, that's how they do it. But yeah, I still have that document on my computer. I'm happy to bring it back and we can take a look at what we've paid up to date versus if we pay it off now, what it would be. Or if we kept paying the interest every year.
As we get into the wastewater project, we could probably have our financial partner tell us about the trade-off. We did reserve the money. We could pay it off, which would let us borrow more money for the wastewater plant. So it's
I
like
think that was part of why it was a conversation
that money
last
would
year.
be at a higher interest rate. So I think it's a complicated calculation.
My last major question, on page 42, the document with the gas tax, streets and sidewalk fund 03. It shows a deficit of $97,013, but then it says transfers in from Fund 35. So one is, I'm curious why we would build a $97,000 deficit and then follow it up, hopefully be answered by what is Fund 35.
Want to go? So I don't know, basically want to, 35 is another street fund, I believe.
35 is a street reserve fund. It's
So
a,
we are taking significant
But not general fund reserve. We're using a street reserve to pay for a street project, which is what it's for.
Not the general fund.
no, yeah, those funds are not allowed to be used for general fund expenses. Yeah, 35 is not.
the typical balance in a Fund 35. And this $97,000 would not use their balance significant or how does it?
That fund's similar to like, I mean, it quite literally is a traffic mitigation fund. So it helps the city. We use that money to mitigate traffic impacts. So it's meant for street work. That's hence why it's a streets fund. It goes up and down based on construction activity in the city. So if someone builds a new house, they pay traffic mitigation fees to the city to fund, you know, maintaining our streets. It's just same with the parks fund, same with the AB 1600 police fund. It's the same concept, just specifically for the streets.
But what's the balance generally is what Julie's asking.
Oh, I mean,
Does that take it down and now it's gone, or is there something left over?
I mean, it's off the top of my head, I don't know the historical balances on that account for the last few years. To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you like for our city what it would be. I can come back with that number, but I don't know the historical.
Big problem. But that was one of the most significant deficits.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely, I don't remember it offhand either. I mean, we're definitely taking it down and then
Yeah.
Measure P will kick in, kind of replenish it. But I mean, the other thing I wanted to say, and again, I'm not like, we need to do tons and tons of development, but some new development is going to help pay for these things. And our budget is so close. Just approving a few projects could really make a difference for the city for a lot of these capital projects.
I think it's an important point to make as we continue to struggle financially in this little town, that if we've got no development and this is where we are, we're going to have these same very difficult discussions every year.
I think when we get feedback from the Nexus study to see, you know, they'll compare us to similar cities and similar size and activity
Yeah.
to see what they think, because we've been operating, I'm sure you remember, we just would increase our impact fee amounts by the construction percentage that they recommended each year in that professional publication. But was
Right.
that the appropriate percentage increase, or are we overextending? Are we under? I mean, I'll be interested to see what they say, what an appropriate rate to charge for new construction would be, and how we consolidate those into categories that we might be able to better leverage when we get to budget time every year. there's a lot of very specific categories that I think, I'm just curious to see what they say when they come back about, is it too specific? Could we make it more broad?
I think that we want to make sure with the development to be mindful of how it will allow this town to grow, because we could find ourselves with a burden that we didn't think of with traffic and whatnot, which is why probably most of the people are here, is because of the small town feel. And if you look at the suburban sprawl everywhere in this country, I think that we need to consider the trade-offs. And I agree that there's room for development, but just that we are careful to see that it be done well and sustainably.
Of course, that's very important. Julia, you done?
Since we seem to be asking questions and Mason, you're here. In the finance, the charge against the lighting, Crestview Lighting District for $16,000. Can I talk about that?
Yeah,
Why is that such a big number?
yeah.
And what is that for? What's that? What necessitates that
The expense.
the expense?
We have very bright lights.
The expense, well, they have lighting charges too on that fund, but that expense comes from my time and my staff's time creating the receivables for the members of that community and then receiving those payments and processing them. We typically, when we do the allocation for each fund by department, it's a percentage. And I think we only allocated like 1 or 2% to that fund, which we thought was really small, but that number came out to be kind of large. But that's what that number's from, is my staff time invoicing the folks up there for the lighting charges for that year.
So I mean, it's a much bigger number than in past years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that going to be the number going forward?
Well, no. So like I said, the allocation to that fund is typically a percentage. I think off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's might have been 1 or 2% of my staff time. I might agree with you that seems a little bit high. But that we'd have to shift some of that money somewhere else, since it's an allocation of the staff time. So it would reduce in Crestview, but it'd have to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. It might
it's-
seem a little
it's-
inflated at this time.
I see it. It's just an allocation,
Right.
really, and the money is going to be your staff time is there regardless of what
Right.
fund it's allocated to.
Yeah, correct.
But it just seems like a big number for what?
For what it is.
50, 100 houses there? I don't know how many.
Yeah, I think it's about 54.
54
Mhm.
houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The other way to look at it is the general fund pays for the streetlights in the rest of the town. We are getting a little bit of revenue here, or we don't get in other neighborhoods. We did look at it last year. It's an old CFD. We can't raise it. It's at the max rate. So it's not covering the PG&E bills for that neighborhood, but
Right.
So I'm just wondering if
I think it's a fair point.
would it,
I think
does
it's
it
a
make
fair-
sense just to eliminate the district and eliminate the billing you have your staff time to administer it?
Mhm.
Well,
Well,
like we're just wasting money.
Yeah,
I
let's
think
think
I'm
about it.
agreeing with you where I don't know if $16,000 for staff time for that specific function is an appropriate amount. It could most likely be reduced. I think I'd agree with you. And we'd have to shift it probably somewhere else. It could be general fund, it could be wastewater, it could be wherever we're spending our time. We make our best estimate now
Right.
for the rest of the year. But
So this,
I wanted to ask, I think we talked about this last year when we looked at how much we were charging Crestview, but was a Prop 218 notice necessary to raise those if we wanted to? I don't remember what we landed
No.
on for the lighting district.
yeah,
Okay,
the CFD had a
Oh.
max increase, which was hit.
that was that
And
dollar.
You'd have to vote again, which now would
That's
be
what it
every
was.
household.
Yeah, I
What's
knew there was a
the
vote.
total income even though, because it's only, what is it like?
It's like $53 annually for 54 houses. So
And it's
53 times 54.
$2,600.
It's about that. Yeah.
This is really kind of an accounting artifact. I wouldn't
Yeah,
worry about it
I
too
get that,
much.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I realize that it's just a small item, but I want to kind of educate myself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bill them once a month, they send them a bill? Send a bill?
So
Okay.
I just bill them annually because the
Annually.
dollar amount is, I think in the CFD language, I think it's an annual fee we charge them for the
Mhm.
year's lighting.
Uh-huh,
So we bill them in April every year.
Right.
And we get payments from them.
and then like sewer bills, it goes, if they don't pay, then it goes on to the tax rolls? Okay.
Jim, if I could
Yep.
add something to what you're saying, my concern about this is that, Mason, I hear you saying, we kind of estimate how much time we're going to spend. But Tom has spent a lot of time in the last couple of meetings talking to us about time cards being utilized to make sure that the allocations are on target. So this is a discrepancy, and I think that's what's maybe bothering you, is that it doesn't line up with what we've been talking about.
Well,
I don't think that, no.
No, I'm just more wondering, it does seem like that it's a lot, but my.
But if we're not
question
using
is-
time cards,
But
then
if we're only.
no, but
if-
it is.
If it
One-
costs us $4,000 or $3,000 to administer that district, then
Right.
let's just get rid of
Right.
it.
But that's not what we're saying, Dan. We are tracking the time.
Mhm.
It's 1% of finance with all the overhead allocated. That's what it is. So
well,
It's
I
not
didn't
just-
hear Mason say that. I heard him say we estimate for next year. I didn't hear you say we interrogate the time cards and make a determination based on actuals.
oh, okay.
Is that what you do, or do you just take a shot? I mean, that's,
We look at our current year and we
Mhm.
project it to next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can say, this year we spent this much time on general fund projects, this much time on wastewater products, this much time on streets, this much time on
right.
XYZ, right?
Right.
And it's a mixture of that. And then we look at next year's, what we're working on. If you look at like the public works budget or anything,
I
it's
get
going
all
to be
that.
heavily wastewater. So we take a combination of those two things
I get all that.
and we make a strong estimate. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't tell you exactly where I'm going to spend my time in March of
I
2026.
totally get that. It's the Crestview specificity of the thing that just doesn't make sense to me for a number of reasons.
Well,
One
when
is-
you're spending 16,000
Yeah.
to get 4,000.
Right.
But again, it's taking a department that if we don't, it's an allocation again.
Right.
It's electric bill, it's
Right.
office supplies, it's their computers,
Right.
it's their internet access,
Mhm.
all gets added up. And so again, it's kind of an accounting thing. Don't get hung up on that. We're spending 16 to get $2,000. We're going to spend that 16 out of the general fund if we don't spend it here. It doesn't go away.
Well, I think maybe we're all saying reallocate it.
Mhm.
I mean, that wouldn't be like something I wouldn't
I will say this.
budget on, but going forward.
In the past, we had previously, because it's such a nominal amount of time, really at the end of the day, it's 1 month out of the year, we're doing a lot of the process. I would say 2 months because it's the month of invoicing and then the that month and the next month of collections, right? So previously in the past budgets, we wouldn't even allocate staff time to that. We would just eat it and put it into general fund. I added it thinking it'd be a little more transparent to say, hey, we do spend some time on Crestview. We're not ignoring Crestview.
Yeah.
And then now we're seeing that when you do like a 1%, it's still a big number. It is, it
Yeah.
looks like a big number. So
wonder
there's a
if-
balance there, I think. I don't want to completely omit it saying we're not spending any
Yeah.
time on Crestview, but I also don't want to say we're spending all that much time on Crestview. It is a part of our process through the year, but is it that much
And
of our time?
interestingly, with some of these smaller developments coming, we're talking about new CFDs. And I think, we got to look really hard at max levels in them because they stick around for a long time. And then I'm finding out that there are some state programs where the state will administer a CFD for you. So I think if we add some more CFDs in the future, we can handle them in different ways.
I wonder too, when you went back at last year and looked at the time spent, we talked about this at a couple meetings. You guys did a bunch of research on Crestview and you took it to Derek and, it was a thing for a while. So maybe that counted into your hours last year. Next year would, look a little
It
different.
might go away.
So, what can regarding this use when on page 46, says charges for, under revenues, charges for services. It's actually lower, the proposed budget for 25-26 is actually lower than 24-25. But given PG&E rates and other increases, why would the charges actually go down? Is that because they are capped? But they were higher in 24. So projected.
Well-
24-25 charges per service was $2,700.
Oh,
Proposed budget for 25-26 is actually less, 2650.
There was some interest earned in
There's-
previous years that you're not showing in next year or this coming up.
I will say that the lighting charges have fluctuated a little bit year to year. So if you look at that first historical year, 2544, next year's 2491, next year's 2703. So it just does fluctuate a little bit. I think sometimes like it's hard to say exactly why PG&E's billing fluctuates like that, but
This is our revenue, right?
So
I'm looking at 47, I think. Are you looking at page 47 or 46?
46.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it now. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
and on this.
Good. A good point. It's almost like it's down one house.
Maybe,
Yeah.
Well, that's one house difference. It's $53.
might be the collection. Like, did somebody not pay or something?
Yeah, we might have made up a. No, it's a
You
good
might-
point. It's exactly one house.
You might be waiting, that might have gone to the tax rules and you're waiting to get reimbursed, you know.
I think we might have collected one that year. We might have gotten an extra one. I mean, I can get my calculator out and tell you.
You know, for $53, we ought to move on.
It's like,
We're spending more than.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah.
Talking about it.
I mean, we're burning up the time for the crest fee. It could be if somebody paid in June versus July and it swings back and forth.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
While we're on this, I think we could get lower wattage bulbs as well.
We did have a new there's a new house being built up there. So that actually might go up a little bit because we are having new construction up there.
Well, that would change everything.
yeah.
Thank
They
you.
actually,
Just a fun fact.
they do have their electricity hooked up as well.
And I remember they're harder to change. We can't change them, or somebody else, when they have to be changed, it's a pain in the neck. Were you guys here for that?
You mean the rate?
No, the light.
Oh.
Yeah, it takes the fire department or somebody has to do it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, let's.
Okay, anything else?
I have one about more money. It's more than $56. And I just need,
Fair.
53.
I just need a little education. On page 33, we're looking at the wastewater fund. And I see that the revenue is up, 1.25 million, which makes sense because the charges are up by about 500. And then it shows transfers in of 830. And that's my question is, where does that 830, where did that come from?
Great question. So last year we did a similar thing. We assume that ARSA will dissolve in this year. And so their money, when we dissolve, their account will combine with ours, and that would technically be a transfer. And that's funds the city does not have that we're going to be getting. But I'm not going to call it as revenue. We didn't generate revenue.
Oh, fair enough.
It's just it's an interesting thing where we're not generating money, but it's money we're going to get as we assume the responsibility of their.
This has nothing to do with it dissolving, though. This is transfer in of capital project money that ARSA's reserved,
Right.
that the city's going to do the work.
Is there actual cash money involved or is it just?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. ARSA. Yeah. The funds that ARSA has their own bank account. So
Okay.
it would dissolve into us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, ARSA's budget has been what's been saving for the Henderson repair.
Gotcha.
But it'll, at this point, be paid out of ARSA, depending on when that got wrapped up, that money would come here and we'd pay for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My very last question, on page
It doesn't have to be your last
32.
question.
Um,
You only get two more last questions.
on page 32, federal services, employee benefits, pretty stable. Comp adjustments, a new category or amount for 25-26.
Yes. Oh, we're going to talk about this in closed session.
And just for your clarification too, since you mentioned the employee benefits, that those funds that we send out are for the closed OPEB program that we have for retirees. We have about 3 retirees that get this benefit paid by the city pretty much, I think, until they reach Medicare age. One did fall off a few years ago, but we do pay that benefit to them.
Anybody else?
I have another question. It's not a huge deal, but I just noticed, and don't tell my wife Lottie I'm mentioning this, but she does or did jazzercise for a lot of years. So jazzercise pays the same amount for the last 4 years that I see in terms of rent, and our costs are going up. Do we ever adjust that rent?
I'm telling Lottie.
We were talking about that today. We need to look at, we have a contract with them. We need to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a huge deal, but I just thought, our costs are
It was
going
quite
up.
a while ago that, when since the last increase was.
There was an increase a few years ago, wasn't there, Jim? Do you
Yeah,
recall?
yeah, oh, yeah.
I remember seeing like there was an updated agreement. I looked it up a little bit ago.
It's gotta be
It's a few years old now.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it is. From what I recall, it's a few years old now.
Yeah, the documentation shows from 2002 to now, it's the same.
Right.
So for the projected, so that's 4 years, yeah. Mhm. Oh, and another just to, curious. In the general fund revenue, and you don't have to you can go to the page if you want, it's 14 in the budget, but it lists franchise cable. And it's down 10,000 from 3 years ago. And I'm just curious, Mason, if you or somebody might know what that is and why it would have gone down.
This is something I've been trying to learn more about because franchise fees were a bit of an enigma for me. Tom mentioned I called Republic just to kind of get the lowdown on how their franchise fees work, and it was educational. But it's it's a great question. I think they each do it slightly differently. Probably I think.
So these are fees that these companies pay the city for the right to offer their services.
Right.
Yeah.
This is Comcast, mostly,
Yeah.
I think, and people are cutting cable and going to streaming. So you're going to see it continue to decrease, I think, over time.
Oh, is it based on utilization then?
No, it's based on paying for cable TV. So if people stop paying for cable, start using internet streaming, this franchise fee goes away. There's no franchise fee for internet services.
Well, that's what I mean in terms of less people using Comcast.
Right. That's
Right.
why it's going down.
Yeah.
So
So
a Comcast customer, I'm a Comcast customer for internet, but I don't have the cable portion of it. So I'm not counted in that.
no, I think
that
if you look at your cable TV bill, you'll see a franchise fee on it and you won't see that on your internet bill.
Oh, interesting.
So it's the thing with the FCC
And the reason you'll see like Aces or Republic going up is because it's based on customers and like how much they're charged. And so as the rates go up, we get an increased
Yeah.
franchise fee.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
On, under Public Works on page 49, for materials and services, I noticed that the beautification from last year doubled. That's not a problem. But then I looked down and saw that restrooms allotment was down, as well as janitorial. Took almost a 2,500 hit. So is the increase in beautification of almost a little over $3,000 worth giving up janitorial and restroom services, especially when we'll have the new restroom at Price Park.
So the beautification is a new strand of Christmas lights, which they break every year. So we just need to start replacing them a little bit every year. Yeah. And then the rest of it is really, yeah, I mean, the rest of it is really just trying to squeeze the budget down to fit the money. So nothing other than that.
That just seems like we're adding an additional restroom, public restroom, but we're decreasing the amount of money to take care of the entire restroom system.
Is that just,
You're talking
like-
about $50, I think, 550 to 500.
No, it's more than that.
8,900 down to 6,500.
That's janitorial. I was looking at the restroom line.
Oh, restrooms is up.
Right. Yeah. So again, this is supplies, and again, we're just trying to.
And I think if you look at historical too for the restrooms, I mean, it was $300 a couple years ago, $150 the year. Last year was a spike. Like we ran out of something that we only have to buy every few years. 115 to 555, and then 500 back down a little bit. I mean, the trend was lower. Last year was a bit of a spike. It's for restrooms, it's typically toilet paper, cleaning supplies for the floor, stuff like that.
So does
Right.
janitorial include the cleaning of the restrooms?
Yeah, so janitorials, yeah, correct. So it's
So that's Julia's question.
mhm.
Decreasing the amount of money to take care
Mm,
of all,
I see what you're saying.
especially since 2 years ago, the
Janitorial's gone.
was-
Yeah. Right.
the janitorial doesn't include the labor of cleaning the bathrooms, though. That's
No.
up here in salaries and wages. It's just the supplies.
Well, that's, what is it? What is janitorial?
It's supplies. At the end of the day, it's just supplies. So it's the mop heads, and it's the cleaning floor with
Product.
chemicals, and the toilet paper, and the paper towels, and the this and all that stuff that we use to clean the bathrooms and the facility floors and the
So I think the question is, there still will be an emphasis on keeping the restrooms
I mean,
clean.
if you look at the total for supplies, it's pretty flat for the last 3 years, right? So we move money, if we're off a few bucks here and we're over in another, we move it around a little bit.
But we're not cleaning the bathrooms less. It's just fluctuation.
And this is since we're talking about it, I'm going to bring it up. The Italian Society, we just had our Italian picnic, and we installed hand blow dryers in the restrooms and eliminated all that waste mess and the cost of paper towels. I don't know what the return on investment is going to be time-wise, but it's something to might consider for our restrooms.
We have blow dryers in this park.
Okay.
Yeah. And
there also are in the auditorium.
But I'm down here, right, the restrooms behind here in the parking lot, any restrooms, this new restroom, I would definitely recommend we do that up there for that new restroom. And maybe consider retrofitting current restrooms. We're talking about
Yeah.
renting out city facilities for more revenue. Let's look at both sides, cut expenses if we can, so.
Thank you.
anybody else?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. The first was in the revenue under taxation. That's where sales tax and TOT hit. I'm not quite sure. It's early on.
It's down at the bottom.
No, I think it was like the first. Sorry, I meant to be there.
General fund revenues?
Yeah.
There's another sheet that lists all the places that's from.
Which one's that?
Page 14 has all of the itemized,
Okay.
four-
Page
14 and 15.
Okay.
And 13's a good summary.
Yeah.
13.
Yeah. 13, 14, 15.
Okay, perfect. And then with regard to that, do, I just want to continue to ask the question, and I'm not trying to hold up the budget in any way, but because so much of the city is funded with TOT and sales tax, I wonder as a longer term conversation if we should really be talking about, and I know, Tom, you've mentioned Visit Amador is a partner now and they are better funded, but to keep thinking about marketing the town, because I think because we're so reliant on that money, it's kind of troublesome to only look to a volunteer organization for the marketing. And I know we're spending that small amount with the firm that's going to do social media, but I think that we should going forward have on the agenda, not maybe till later this
Yeah.
summer, but just
Yeah.
how to really promote the town, because there's so much competition and the money's
So
strange right now.
just to clarify, there was an article in the newspaper. We're not spending that much on social media. That was the total marketing budget. And that
No, I know that.
Okay.
No, it's like 8,000 divided by
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But the total
yes.
marketing budget includes support of the visitor center and a bunch of events and some co-advertising dollars. We kept it flat. That was another one I was looking at. If we needed to make cuts, do we cut there? But it's flat in this budget. TOT's about 316,000 of the general fund. Again, because these new business districts are new and they're going to generate pretty significant amount of money to promote the county and the cities, I felt like let's wait and see how they do and get going.
Fair enough.
It was like, I think over $700,000 of new money. So
I just, long term, I wonder if there's some way we can support the business association a little better. And then,
But before you move on, Susan, for that point, it's not really reflected in the budget, but I do think in the last year or probably two, the city's done a better job just communicating and working with the businesses and the different associations to support, their efforts. It's not necessarily a budget item, but, city staff's going to meetings and, I think there's a good working relationship there where people are building off each other's efforts.
yeah, I just think as we see those two groups, Visit Amador and the Heritage Wine District, unfold, we might want to keep an eye on it and see if actually spending money would bring more money than we end up spending. Just thought it was worth the mention. And then also, have we had a conversation with the county with regard to dispatch and animal control and how that's gone up so much? And is there any way to advocate for that to level out?
good, Jim, if you want to speak, why don't you go over to the mic? So
Hello, that's a great question. And I'm with you. I look at that number and it just punches me in the face as it probably does with you as well. I can tell you I've had conversations with the sheriff regarding that, and how it impacts us. Anyone that will listen, we talk about that. With respect to the dispatch fees, the alternative, and we've talked about it a little bit in the ad hoc committee, is looking at options of creating our own dispatch center. That also is costly. So it's a question we continue to ask. We have that conversation pretty much around this room, everyone here, about how we can mitigate that and bring it down. So that's the issue with the dispatch fees. Animal control is another issue. We have no control over that whatsoever. We don't have control over what people spend, what we get charged by presently by animal control. We've had a number of meetings regarding that. I continue to advocate for a different solution for that. I just don't know what the answer is. At some point, I figure The Board of Supervisors might have some input for us, but at present, I think we're kind of stuck in terms of what we have to pay animal control. So all those questions, I'll tell you, they're striking to me, and I'd like to find a solution. I'm working on it. I look all the time. I talk to my colleagues, but we're kind of stuck in the water.
Jim, I appreciate, I know you've been working hard on both those things every year. And it seems from you and from Tom too, that you're working with the other departments, the other cities' departments, and Tom's working with the other city managers. And I think, that's the key to this thing, is all of the cities working together to communicate to the county, because everybody's in the same boat. Nobody likes to look at that bill.
Yep, I agree with
I
you.
mean, those two items, we would not be transferring out of the general fund if we didn't have those expenses. And I don't know if it'd make any difference with the county, but we are looking at comparable cities, and I don't see animal control in any of their budgets. I don't know if other counties charge cities for animal control.
Any of ours, though,
Yeah.
Yep,
last year.
correct.
And
Yep.
what is the reason that the dispatch fee has gone up so much?
I think that mirrors the cost increases we have across the board for municipalities. I think labor is an issue because the dispatch centers, as we've talked before in the ad hoc committee, the dispatch center are relatively affordable radios and repeaters. The cost behind that are the people that are on the other end of the radio, the training of those people. So to me, and they're people costs, they're human resource costs, and that's the increase.
Does the county give us, obviously their county's dealing with the same thing we are, increased costs, but I know we really, attempted to have them show us the animal control fees. And so when ACES, for instance, increases their rates and they have to prove it to us, it's almost like a rate study. Does the county give us anything? Any documentation or backup when they increase the dispatch fees?
Not really in terms of why we have that increase, other than the fact we're going to have increase. I know what I've heard talking to the sheriff and others, and it's reasonable, just like we have these issues here, are people costs. It's all related to the cost of having humans behind the radio. And that part, as a manager, I understand. Doesn't mean I agree with the number, but I understand that people cost money.
I think maybe what you're asking, is it based on per dispatch every time they?
No, sir, it's a percentage. I think we pay 7%.
Okay, it's
of the total cost.
Maybe based on population. they
Population,
use it.
correct. So
Okay,
we're-
but they do have a formula. I think
They
that's
have
what
a
you get
formula.
at. What is the formula that they're using?
We pay 7% of the total cost of a dispatch center.
What, 7?
7,
7.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. So did the formula change when it went to from 100,000 to 180, or is it the cost rose that quickly, do you
The
think?
costs have risen. It's always been that percentage for us. And I think going back like 4 or 5 years in the budget, we started out again, for me, it was an astronomical number, like $96,000. And you might have that budget in front of you, and it has gone up incrementally since. And I must say this because we're in a public forum, they provide a fantastic service. So I have no quarrel with the level of service and the human beings in our partnership with them. But like you, I'm interested in how we can best use our city dollars and our citizens' dollars. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, just for
Anything for
everybody's
Jim while he's
education,
there?
in case they don't know, what is the cost per unit of service from the animal control? I think that's a number that will surprise people.
It's about, and I don't have the exact number. So in very general terms, if someone drops off an animal
Right.
and they say they're from Sutter Creek, and they have a driver's license from Sutter Creek, I believe it's $800, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I feel like it's eight something.
I knew that. I just wanted everybody
Okay.
to know.
And
what
and
it was.
again, thank you for reminding me of that. I do want to say yet again, we have no control over that. So if they say someone is from Sutter Creek and they show a driver's license from Sutter Creek and they bring in 5 stray cats, we get charged 5 times $800 plus. That's how that money goes. And again, I have is the police manager, I have no impact, no control over how those dollars are spent. And that has always been bothersome to me as, you know, our fiduciary.
We can keep beating that drum though, you know, the five of us. And,
It's
you
not-
know, we had a presentation and since then, you know, I'm sure the rest of you have heard from individuals that have been there and done that. And there isn't a differentiation between if you drop off a spayed and neutered animal with paperwork and shots, or if, you know, it's somebody off the street. So I think we can keep hammering on that.
Yeah.
I know Jim and I talked to our previous supervisor, but maybe it's time to do that again.
I would hope you would do that. And again, I want to say this, my quarrel is not with the people. The people there, they're partners for us. They provide a great service to our citizens, to the animals of Amador County. My question always is how we control our dollars. So I have no issues with the human beings on the back end of animal control, just the process we're in right now. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else on the council have any points or questions at this
Yeah,
moment?
I do, and this isn't a question, but I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that the UAL that we pay to CalPERS for the unfunded liabilities, I think my numbers are correct, was about 389 last year, and we're looking at about 450 this year. And this is sort of like along the same lines as dispatch and animal control. It just keeps going up. We don't seem to have any control over it. And it reminds me when, Tom, you sent out that kind of an explanation about why it goes up, because they underestimate their rate of return. And I don't know what we can do about it, but it is something that we should all be aware of. That maybe there is something we can do about it, lobby our legislators or something. I don't know. And you might weigh in on it, Mason.
I mean, from our immediate standpoint, we are making the right steps. I mean, we were funding that 115 trust to try and get some interest that's dedicated for that purpose to help, you know, so that's an immediate thing we can do, and we
That's
are
something we
doing.
can do, but I'm talking about trying to bring
Yeah.
those costs down.
For sure, in the long run. Yep. It's
I mean, you know, we talked before, there's the classic and the Pepra. You know, the Pepra UAL's really quite low. And as over time, as the UAL, as the classic people go through the workforce, it will come down. You know, and again, we can talk in the closed session a little bit about the level of employee versus employer contribution can help as well. But you got to look at it like a 30-year mortgage kind of thing. And the important thing I keep showing you guys is that curve. And if the curve was steep, I'd be more worried. It's starting to bend down. I think if a year or two we can see it actually going down, then you'll know, you know, over time it's going to go away. But
you know, I think another big problem with the UAL is we're funding retired folks who've had service with the city in the past. We're still they're part of that calculation as well. So they may not even be employed by us anymore, but we're still paying that UAL for them, those folks. And that's part of the trouble too, is it's their estimates for those folks way back when, and we're still paying because they didn't make their investment returns that they had expected that year. That's a challenge too. And with the markets the way that they are, I mean, CalPERS, the projected returns for this year were great. I think it was like 9.2 or 9.3, and they wanted 6.7. That's great news, but we've seen years where it's been -12. I mean, it's been horrendous some years, and we just have to keep our eye out on how they're doing, and that typically leads the trend for what we're looking at for the next few years. It just depends on how much more realistic they can be getting. Every few years they do reduce it, but when they reduce it, sometimes we see a boost in the OAL as well. So there's a myriad of factors that go into that curve. It's really, really complicated. And things that, like we've all been saying, it's pretty much entirely out of our control about how they estimate their return and who's in that bucket and all that stuff. It's a challenge for everybody. It's, yeah.
So a change of channels, are we losing Aaron part-time, for city planner?
Why?
Under.
Planning costs.
Under planning?
Oh, so again, we had done some extra work that was funded by a LEAP grant this last year. We're going back to kind of a more normal level. And most of what she does is paid by developer fees. So, we've had the discussion about fees versus revenue. Those are cost recovery fees.
Okay,
So,
that seemed to be more in line, of the budget overall from 2 years ago. The big decrease, almost half of last year. It's on page 26. So just a comment.
Yeah, we really leveraged that LEAP grant to allow her to do some work to help us out. So, but that was one-time money. We got that money this year, so we're going back to normal. It was really good to have that money.
Put that in a quote, going back to normal.
We're going. Yeah, right. I know.
I appreciate, I have to say, the work and the clarification, even though I only attended by Zoom and tried to take in what I could, but I appreciate the clarification, the transparency, the work, Tom, you and
Mason.
Mason.
I would say mostly this year. I mean, I did some of
It's easier to understand. And thank you, Aaron, for supplying the information from the past year. So it made it much easier to
and
understand.
next year it's going to look completely different with our new system.
Right.
Yeah, don't fall in love with it.
I mean, I did a lot of work at the beginning, but I've been so swamped these last few weeks. A lot of this work was Tom. So, I take some of the credit, but Tom did a lot of work on this. I've just, Tom said earlier, seriously, I was in a meeting today from 9 to 3, and that's my normal day to day anymore. Seriously, for the last few weeks, I get like an hour lunch if I'm lucky. So I tried to squeeze in stuff where I could, but just giving a lot of feedback when I can. But yes, next year the budget will be done and the new system, it will look different for sure. Just a heads up.
So Claire, are we looking for a motion at this point, I think?
Well, do you guys have anything to add? Nope, there's no public. Council, you good?
Good over here.
Okay, then we're looking for a motion.
I'd move to approve the operating budget for years 25 and 26, both resolutions, if we can, at the same,
And the appropriation.
and the appropriation.
As long as you make clear in your motion and then the records so reflect, you can move both
Yeah.
resolutions.
So I am moving both resolutions. But
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Want to do a roll call vote, Aaron?
Yes, I can. And actually, can I just get clarification on who seconded, please?
Julia.
Julia, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Reardon,
aye.
Councilmember Sirk, I didn't hear anything. Councilmember Sirk? Okay, got it that time. Mayor Gunselman,
Aye.
Councilmember Swift,
I,
Councilmember Feist.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Tom, Mason, everybody, and all the staff.
Yeah, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you, council.
Mayor and council member reports, Susan,
No.
Jim,
no.
Julia.
They're updating a proposal resolution, and that will hopefully come ready for the July 21st meeting.
Dan?
No.
City Attorney's report, Derek?
Nothing.
Future agenda items beyond what we've talked about?
I would
Anybody?
like, BPAC on the, for the July 21st. A BPAC presentation.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I would like to have the bike ped.
Oh, okay.
Presentation, for the 21st.
Okay, and we had some correspondence
I'm
from.
sorry, I had one more thing for the
Yep.
future agenda. Tom, to whatever extent it's possible that we could get an update on the current discussions between the city of Sutter Creek and ACTC regarding the project up the hill.
Yep.
And I'd also like to know if we could get an update on the progress of the building, the old palace building downtown. I've had several community comments, whether some other type of fencing can't be installed just to kind of, or sheeting can't be put up there to kind of hide or put the work on the other side.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Julia, for
I
bringing
have,
that
I
up.
have asked about that, and we can give you an update.
Right. Because as far as I know, we've,
Dan? Again, is the city asked to have some type of sheeting, kind of mesh, at least fencing put up rather than just the chain link that is there?
Yeah, we've actually been talking about a mural or something if it was a solid fence, but
yeah. Because as far as I know, we got the final report on the cause of the fire. Is that
we
correct?
did.
We did?
Yeah.
Well, I never heard the feedback on that.
Yeah. And again, it was similar to what they said to me after, that it looked like it was most likely electrical from near the refrigerator.
Oh. Okay.
No.
Was the city reimbursed by their insurance for extra at the police time and investigation? And I believe we were expecting that, right?
We've put in primarily to fix the roadway and the sidewalk, but it's good for 3 years. It's in process. We want to see if the building's rebuilt. We don't want to fix it until the construction is completed. And it's going to be damaged again. But it's in with our insurance company.
Is that property owned by, I had heard by Stan Lukowitz? The late
No.
Stan Lukowitz?
It's not.
It's owned by Jay and Mandan Michelle.
Yeah.
And some.
We can bring an update though. It's not really agendized for tonight.
Yet.
We had some correspondence from Republic. It's the our what is it? RRI. Their report on why the rates are going to go up. And that'll come back before the rates go up. It'll be agendized, right?
No, you guys passed the 3-year approval period, so this is just a communication.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there anything else? Hey, we're going
It's
to
cold in here.
go into closed session after a brief recess.
You can't win.